Hi, I'm Chris from CodeReviewVideos.com, and in this video and the next few videos we're going to look at how we can edit an existing wallpaper. Before we can get started with that, however, we need to fix our fixtures, as if we try to reload them currently, we're going to hit up on a problem, and we're going to cover how and why that problem occurs as we go through this video. Now, much like when we started looking at how we can create a new wallpaper and we approach that from an untested perspective, we're going to do the same thing with our update wallpaper feature, which is to say that first we will figure out how to do it without tests, and then we'll use that as our prototype and re-implement using tests. So I'm using Git here to check out our code as it was at the end of video 20, and I'm going to name our new branch the untested wallpaper edit branch. Because there may be differences between our tested and untested approaches, I'm going to start off by dropping the database, then recreating it, running our migrations to ensure that our database's schema is in a known state, and then finally loading the fixtures to make sure that our database is populated with some known data. And we can see we hit on a problem here when we try to load our fixtures, called to a member function getPathName on null. So if we look inside our wallpaper fixture, there doesn't actually seem to be any reference to a path name in here. However, if we look inside our wallpaper upload listener, we can see where this call is being made. So we can see here temporary location is equal to the output of file getPathName, and getPathName has been called on file, and file should be the outcome of entity getFile. So what it's saying is when we're calling entity getFile, we actually get null, and then we're trying to call getPathName on that null. Now you may be wondering why on earth our wallpaper upload listener is even being called, as we aren't doing an upload process. So what this highlights is that our wallpaper upload listener is perhaps named incorrectly. Perhaps it should just be wallpaper listener, because we're not really concerned about the process of the upload. If we look at our method name, it's pre-persist, and if we look inside our config for this, really this is just a Doctrine event listener. We're just listening out for any time there's a pre-persist event, and as we covered a few videos ago, this listener will be called anytime any entity goes through a persistence operation. And of course, when we do our load wallpaper data, we are persisting, and so that's why our listener is being triggered. So maybe it would make sense here to rename our wallpaper upload listener to just wallpaper listener. We also need to change the class name and the file name. Now PHP Storm is actually pretty good at picking up stuff like this, although in this case it hasn't done. I'll just do a quick search across the entire project to make sure that I have no more references here. Well, I do, I've got a couple inside the tests and then some instances inside our container, but I'm not too worried about that. So I might as well just fix these up whilst I'm here. Just changing that there from wallpaper upload listener to just wallpaper listener should fix any problems. And again, I just need to update the spec. Just rename the file there. And we should be good, even though we're not testing. Just makes sense to do that. So that's really just a convention inside our project. It doesn't make any difference to the way that these fixtures are going to be loaded, although we can try again just to make sure. You can see we're still getting the same thing. Let's get rid of that for the moment. So what we need to do is go into our load wallpaper data fixture, and we need to pass in some file so that this process behaves as intended. So we can see we're expecting to get an uploaded file instance here. So if we do a new uploaded file, and then the arguments here are the path to the file and the file's name. So let's just start putting some stuff in here and see where we get. So as it stands currently, we don't have access to the container. So we've no easy way to get access to something like the kernel root dir or the kernel project dir if you're on a later version of Symfony. So I'm just going to do this the old-fashioned way. Just use dir, and then I'll concatenate that with a relative path which goes up 4 directories. I'll explain why that is in a sec. Pretty much because we need to get back to the root, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if we jump into our web images directory, we can see that we've got all our files, and the one that I'm after is abstract background pink, which I've already got in here. Might as well just take a copy of that. And then we also need to give it the original name, which again is just abstract background pink in our case. Can be anything. Okay, so rather than worry about doing all of these for the moment, let's just comment them all out. And then command and / on a Mac, control and / on Windows, comment the entire block out. Make sure that's saved, and then we'll try and run our fixtures again. I've got my path name wrong there. It should be web images. So let's fix that up. That's because we're back at the root there, because we've been up 4 directories and then we need to still go down into the web images directory. So apologies there. Let's clear that off, try again. And we get a bit of an issue here that says can't rename because the target already exists. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to load this wallpaper, but when it goes through the wallpaper listener, through the pre-persist, it's going to get its temporary location, it's going to figure out its new location, and then it's going to try and move it. And the problem is we're trying to move it onto itself. And this raises a bit of an issue with the way that our fixtures are currently set up. We have our dynamic fixture data in here, but we're relying on these images already being in situ, so to speak. And now the concept is changing somewhat where we're saying, actually, when we recreate our fixtures, we also want to repopulate the images directory. So what we're going to need to do is move our images directory into our fixtures directory. And then when we rerun our fixtures, we want it to move the file from the fixtures directory into this web images directory. So there's a little sort of gotcha there. We don't actually want to move this original image. We first need to create a copy of that image and then move the copy. Of course, this is just one way to solve the problem. There's probably more. So let's start off by moving this entire images directory into our data fixtures directory. I might as well clear off a couple of these ones because these are my test images. And as best I'm aware, there's no sort of clean way of doing this process. Whatever approach that we take is going to feel a little bit like a hack. So we'll start off by creating a variable called images, which for the moment we'll just say is that dir, so that's the path to our current directory, then slash, because we don't get a trailing slash on there, up one directory, which will take us to our images directory. So that's because we're currently here, we need to go up a directory and then back down a directory. So that's up a directory effectively. Next, we're going to need a temporary storage location for our images. And for that, we'll use a built-in PHP function called sys_getTempDir. And the reason for doing it like this is because if I rely on, say, /temp and you're on Windows, then it probably won't correlate somehow. So this way it should all correlate. We'll just put that into wherever PHP has as a temporary directory, into some /images directory under there. We'll do this as raw as possible just to get this going. We'll just say exec, and then we're going to call the copy command with -r to be recursive. Not that we have any nested images at this stage, but you never know. And we'll go from our images path, in fact we'll just call it images path, make the variable name slightly nicer, and we'll copy that images path to our temporary images path. Instead of using this long path here, get rid of all of that, we'll just concatenate these two. Maybe we could add in a cheeky echo statement that just says copying images to the temporary location. Likewise, we'll just scroll to the bottom here. After our flush, we'll clean up after ourselves and we'll remove the temporary images path. Maybe we'll add in an echo there as well. Now in theory there shouldn't be any images in that directory at the end of this process, but it's just a bit of housekeeping I suppose. So let's give this a shot. Okay, so at a guess, what this is complaining about is that the images directory that we've just moved doesn't exist. We could add something in there, like a make dir-p or something like that. For the moment, I'll just create the directory manually. Try it again. And that looks a little bit better. And we can see our one image is copied across. Now there's one other thing that we should do here. Inside our composer JSON, our fixtures and migrations bundles are both currently available outside of our dev environment. So I'm going to move them into the required dev section, which makes sure that neither of these commands will ever be available inside the production environment. Just to force that through as well, I'm going to do a composer update, as most likely I'm working with some out-of-date packages anyway by now. Now without tests, that's a little bit of a scary process to do. Let's close that one down for the moment, and that one, and also that one. And then let's just see if we can make this a little bit nicer. So we can actually get access to the container inside Doctrine's Fixtures and say if we implement the container aware interface and then implement the required method. So what we'll do here is to set up a private property on this load wallpaper data class called container. And then into that container property, we will store whatever's passed in via set container. So if we type in that to be the container interface, making sure that we've got the appropriate use statement brought in. Then as we've seen already, we could make use of Symfony's file system component. So we'll see where we get using that. So from the container, we can get the file system. And rather than call copy which is only going to work for a single file. We're going to mirror. And the mirror takes the original directory, which in our case is our images path, and then the temporary images path, which is where we want to mirror the images path to. So we'll keep our echo statement in, as at least it tells us what's happening. Get rid of that one for the moment, and we'll tidy up after ourselves as well. So rather than get access there twice, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say file system, just call it FS. Could have done an extract there, I suppose, but for the sake of it, would only have affected one line. So say FS mirror, and let's see if we can't add a little hint here as well. So we'll say @var FS is going to be equal to the file system. And now if we put a cursor in there, Command P, you can see we're getting a little bit of help. And then at the bottom, rather than do that exec, we'll do FS remove our temporary images path. Get rid of that. In fact, I think I will also need to delete that image as well. But we keep the directory. Okay, so let's give this a shot. And that looks good. And that looks good too. So all that remains is to do this same process for every single one of these fixtures, which is a tedious process that I'm not going to make you watch, but do check out the show notes for the completed code.